Welcome to The Explainer, the maintenance matrix. We are kicking things off with some serious high-energy flair today because, well, we're about to unravel a mystery that causes absolute endless drama in housing societies literally everywhere. I'm talking about apartment maintenance fees. If you've ever lived in a multi-story building, you know exactly the kind of tension I'm talking about. You know, the whispers in the hallway, the intense WhatsApp group debates. Today, we're going to decode this matrix of maintenance payments, separate the facts from the fiction, and figure out exactly what your fair share really is.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Is your apartment maintenance a subscription? It sounds like a pretty simple question, but the answer fundamentally shifts how we view our responsibilities as homeowners. You see, a lot of us fall into this trap. We limit our understanding of ownership to just the flat we live in, maybe the specific parking spot we use, and that's it. We start thinking, hey, if I don't use certain amenities, I shouldn't have to pay for them. Basically treating our monthly maintenance like a streaming service that we can just toggle on and off whenever it suits us. But as we'll see, treating this payment like a subscription isn't just a little unfair, it's completely legally flawed.
Section 1. The Great Maintenance Myth.
Every good story needs a villain, right? Well, in the story of our housing blocks, this myth is the ultimate bad guy causing just absolute chaos between neighbors. I don't use it, so I shouldn't pay. That idea right there is the root of the whole problem. When an owner has an unoccupied flat, they so often refuse to pay their dues based on this exact logic. And this fundamentally wrong understanding leads to massive issues. We're talking non-payment by empty flats and entirely incorrect wing-wise sharing of costs. It creates this huge divide, literally turning neighbors against each other, because suddenly the financial burden is no longer balanced.
To completely shatter that myth, we really need to understand the concept of collective ownership. Once a housing block is handed over by the builder to the flat owners, the entire scope of ownership changes. You now have collective ownership over the whole property. This isn't just a theory, it is a legal reality. The building, which your flat is just one small part of, still needs to be maintained, and guess what? That costs money. Your responsibility extends way beyond your front door or your parking spot. It includes all the common areas and amenities, completely regardless of whether you are actively living in the flat or not.
And here is a massive truth bomb for you. Local and community bylaws treat maintenance as an unavoidable cost for building upkeep. Every single unit purchaser has to pay their fair share, irrespective of their occupancy. And look, if you think there's some clever loophole, think again. This has been clearly articulated by courts in thousands of cases across the country, going straight up to Supreme Court rulings. There is absolutely zero discount for an unoccupied flat. None.
Section 2. Where does the money go?
Now, what's really interesting here is looking at the actual costs of keeping your building from just falling apart. We need to see where the money's actually going, because it isn't just vanishing into thin air. It goes to security and housekeeping, ensuring you have guards, CCTV, and a clean environment that doesn't just turn into a garbage dump. It goes to utilities and repair, keeping the electricity on, the water flowing, fixing those annoying elevator breakdowns, and arresting building leakages. And crucially, it funds insurance and the sinking fund, which protects the society's assets against major future repairs. These expenses are literally what keeps the market value of your flat decent. Without this continuous funding, buildings rapidly, and I mean rapidly, degrade.
So we need a massive mindset shift here, and the difference is undeniably clear. A subscription, like your mobile SIM card or cloud storage space, is an individual choice. You pick your plan, and if you aren't using it, you hit pause. Simple. But your maintenance is a common fund. When you bought your flat, you agreed to the bylaws to share expenses. You don't individually subscribe to your maintenance vendor so you can just turn them off when you go on vacation for a month. It is a mandatory contribution to a shared pool to settle collective expenses.
Section 3. The restaurant bill analogy.
To perfectly illustrate the chaotic situation that's currently happening in so many apartment blocks, let's set a little scene. Imagine a group of friends going out to a restaurant, agreeing to share expenses to have a good time. Some folks, sitting crowded in the corner, just order a cup of tea, or maybe they skip food entirely. Meanwhile, others spread out on a massive table and order this lavish, double-cost four-course meal. Now, the final bill arrives. Suddenly, the heavy hitters who ate the four-course meal demand that the bill be split equally among everyone. When the tea drinkers complain, the heavy hitters graciously offer a measly 10 or 20% discount just to suppress the argument. It's wildly unfair, right?
Well, guess what? That restaurant story is the exact story of your housing block today.
Unoccupied flats claim they didn't use the amenities, while people living in smaller, more congested flats are forced to pay almost equally to those living in massive units. Because of flawed calculations, one wing of a building might be generating 2/3 of the total expenses, but they completely refuse to change the payment structure because, well, they're used to the smaller flats subsidizing their luxurious lifestyle. It's a direct violation of both the bylaws and just basic fairness.
Section 4. Calculating your fair share.
So, the crucial point is, how do we fix this? How do we actually find a resolution that's fair, legally sound, and works in the real world? Generally speaking, there are 3 methods to calculate maintenance. First up is by flat area, which calculates costs proportionally. This is great when there are really distinct differences in flat sizes. The second is a flat rate, where everyone pays the exact same amount. Now, this really only works when all flats are virtually identical in size and usage. But in most modern societies with widely varying flat sizes and complex amenities, both of these methods are pretty flawed on their own. And that brings us to the third option, our absolute saving grace, the hybrid method.
And let's look at a couple of examples because it brilliantly illustrates why the hybrid method is the absolute best fit. It divides expenses based on their actual nature. Take terrace leakage repairs, for instance. The larger the footprint of the flat, the more area there is to maintain. So that cost naturally should be calculated by flat area. But then consider a security camera. A camera provides the exact same security benefit to a cozy 1-bedroom flat as it does to a sprawling 4-bedroom penthouse. Therefore, that is a fixed cost that should be shared equally. The hybrid method beautifully balances those proportional costs with the equal costs.
Now, I know exactly what you were thinking right now. You're thinking, okay, that's a great theory, but in the real world, money is collected first and spent later. Building expenses are totally dynamic. They change from month to month. So how do we actually fix the contribution amount for a hybrid system without turning the society office into a total administrative nightmare?
Well, the practical solution is actually surprisingly elegant. You don't even disrupt the day-to-day. You just keep collecting amounts the exact same way you do today. But behind the scenes, you start filing all those expenses into those 2 distinct categories we talked about, area-based and fixed. Then, at the year-end meeting, elected representatives review the data with the members. You calculate any excess paid by the smaller flats over the course of the year, and you simply pause their collection for the next cycle until the balance is fairly settled.
The benefits of doing it this way are undeniable. It is incredibly easy to implement because it requires absolutely no immediate change to your current monthly collection setup. It relies on a simple, once-a-year settlement that makes the entire financial system fully transparent. But most importantly, it resolves that constant friction and brings harmony back to the block because it is definitively fair to everyone, whether you're in a large flat or a small one.
Which brings us to our final question today. Are you going to keep quietly paying for someone else's 4-course meal, or is it finally time to bring true transparency to your building? Collective ownership absolutely means collective responsibility, but it also has to mean collective fairness. Take this knowledge to your next society meeting and change the game. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you on the next Explainer.